Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Sematary Club. Hi guys. The last rung on the ladder is a Stephen King short story that I have a really difficult time with. It's just so sad. That's the only emotion that this produces. It is the most heartbreaking short story from Stephen King that I can think of off the top of my head. I've always felt that way. I feel like Stephen King does a good job at eliciting emotion. I know that certain books, It, Insomnia, Lissy's Story, Duma Key, I'm sure there are others, but those books for sure have made me cry reading them. And I feel like because Stephen King is a horror writer, sometimes his work gets ignored when it comes to being emotional and just beautifully written. So this short story is definitely in that category where it's not a horror story at all. This is just about the relationship between a brother and sister. So if you have not read this one will be very hard to explain, probably. The premise of the story is that a man who is a high-powered lawyer, he grew up in Nebraska, came from a working farm. His mom died when he was, I think, in high school, and his dad lost the farm, and then their family unit just kind of splintered. He went off to college. He was very busy. I'm guessing that being a lawyer is very hard work, and you have to climb the ladder, and you have to put in a lot of hours. Well, his sister, Kitty, is her little nickname, but her name is Katrina. She's his younger sister, and she looked up to him, and she kind of lost her way in life. She had one failed marriage, then she kind of had another failed marriage, and eventually she gave up and she jumped off of a tall building, an insurance building in Los Angeles, and killed herself. So we enter the story not really knowing this history yet, but we find out that the brother and the father had just come back from hanging up her things and dealing with her death. And there's a letter waiting for her brother, Larry. And when he gets the letter, he sees that it has been like sent all over the place. It has, whenever they forward mail on and this address is no longer the correct address, they stamp it, so it's just been through the mill. He realizes and feels guilty because he has moved around and he kept meaning to give her his new address and he just kept forgetting. So, if the letter hadn't had to go through the system and ping pong around, he would have been able to help her. So that is part of the heart-wrenching portion of this, because he does love his sister. It's this letter, and we don't know what's in the letter yet. Stephen King does not reveal that to us, but it has upset Larry. Quote, "And I had no one I could tell. A thing like that letter, it's too personal to tell anyone except a wife or a very close friend." Page 279. So because work is his life, he has divorced his wife, and he doesn't really have any close friends. Quote, "There was only a single sentence below the Dear Larry, but a sentence can mean enough, it can do enough." Page 279. So this then brings him back to reminisce, and we're in Nebraska, which is kind of interesting because Children of the Corn just happened to be in Nebraska, and that was the story previous to this one. Nebraska factors into The Stand also. Stephen King does have a habit of drawing from Nebraska. So it's like a nice childhood that they had on the farm, big farm, kind of idyllic and slow pace of life, and you know, the little things made kids happy kind of thing. And one day, the parents went out to do things, and the kids were left alone, so no one else is on the farm. They go to the barn to play after they do their chores, and they are not supposed to climb this ladder into the loft. It's a 70-foot high beam above the barn floor. And they, of course, climb the ladder. And once you climb the ladder, there's a beam that goes across the run of the barn, and if you scoot out 12 feet, you will be above the huge mound of hay. So already you're climbing 70 feet up, and then you're over nothing but hard barn floor for 12 feet before you sidle out and are able to stand above hay, which would afford you some protection if you fell. So that in itself is terrifying. Apparently they would go up there when their parents weren't aware because they're not allowed, and they would jump into the hay, and then they would climb up, walk out, jump, and so on. Larry always had to go first, and you know, he was always really nervous doing it. Larry says, quote, "I think I never believed the hay was there the way Kitty believed it." Page 284. Kitty would often do like a swan dive and just put her whole heart into jumping into this pile of hay. And Larry was always a little more nervous about it. And so they are jumping all day. They're you know, climbing up the ladder, walking across, jumping down, and it's getting dark. Larry notices on his last jump that the ladder is even looser than before, and it's getting to be a concern where he thinks it's dangerous to go up there. So he does his jump, which I don't know why he wouldn't shout down, "Hey, I'm making this last jump. Don't go up the ladder anymore." But anyway, he jumps into the hay. By the time he gets out of the hay and is, you know, able to see again, Kitty is already up the ladder. So he probably should have warned her. The ladder breaks and falls to the ground. So Kitty is hanging on to a rung that's about 60 feet above the floor. And there's no other way down. And he tells her, you know, chill out, don't move, just wait. Quote, "Her legs stopped kicking and she hung straight down, her small hands clutching the last rung on the ragged end of the ladder like an acrobat whose trapeze had stopped." Page 285. So what Larry does is he relocates as much hay from the pile of hay in the, you know, 12 feet away to underneath where his sister is hanging. So he just runs back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and he is making a small pile for her to jump into. And this goes on and on and on until she cannot hold on any longer. So he tells her, "Okay, just drop." And she does. And she plummets that 60 feet straight into this pile that he has made for her. And there's a big thud, and he's concerned that she is dead. And he goes over, and she is, you know, not looking great. And then she opens her eyes and she's okay. She's broken her ankle, but that's it. So it was impressive that she didn't do any other damage. So later when Larry talks to her, he finds out that she had no idea what he was doing underneath her. She was too nervous to look, and she just trusted him, and she knew he would take care of things because he's her older brother. And you know, when he said to jump, she realized it would be safe and he had taken care of it, so she just did. And he was so impressed by that she had this blind faith in him, knowing that he had fixed the situation. I think that's when it gets extra sad, because she trusts him and she loves him so much. And then we have this whole cats in the cradle. Remember that old song? There's a whole cats in the cradle theme going on here, where she would write to him about her life and how disillusioned she was becoming and how sad things were for her, and he would be busy doing his own stuff and he wouldn't respond, or he'd, you know, give an occasional response, but then eventually she just stopped writing. And it's made clear that she was the one who stopped writing. And after Larry and his wife divorced, his wife had kind of been in charge of correspondence with Christmas cards and those little things that you'd send back and forth. So then there was just nothing. So then there's the article in the newspaper about her death, Kitty's death. Call girl swan dives to her death, page 288. And it's just so sad because he said if he had gotten the letter earlier, he would have known to go help her. If you don't want to know what the letter says, don't listen any further, because I'm going to read it. So here is what Kitty wrote to Larry. And Larry says this is the only thing that would have sent him on the run. Quote, Dear Larry, I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and what I've decided is that it would have been better for me if that last rung had broken before you could put the hay down. Your Kitty. And it's just so sad. It's so sad. And it's, if you had given this story to someone to read and asked them to, like, pick an author, you know, who do they think wrote this story, I'm guessing a lot of people would not have chosen Stephen King. So he does have so much range, and I think this story is so hard for me because I cannot read this and not be sad about it. Not think about, you know, missed opportunities and families drifting apart and stuff like that, and the despair someone must have felt, and the feeling of abandonment, I guess. And it's just, I love when a book can make me feel this much emotion. You know, I've always been very sensitive. I love a book that makes me cry. Where the Red Fern Grows is a book that just destroys me. I cannot read that book without tissues. I just cannot. So I do enjoy that easy manipulation that some authors have. You know, I think that's one of the greatest compliments to an author. Being able to write something that makes someone feel such raw emotion is very, very impressive. And this story is just painful. It's very painful. And yeah, let me know if you've read this one. Let me know what you think about it. I'd be very curious to know if I'm alone in my assessment. But I think it's beautifully written, and it's so, so heart-wrenching. And and that's the thing, even though I know the story, and I know it's coming, it hits you like a sledgehammer. It's powerful. Have a spooky day.